Hi everyone, welcome to the ICBA Daily News Update for Monday morning, July the 8th, 2024. I'm trying a different thing here with these little videos. I'm going to use our new Meta glasses so you can kind of see the links and the articles that we're talking about while I go through them. Of course, for links to sources, you'll need to visit ICBA We can't post media links here on Facebook because of the Trudeau government's foolish online news act. Hopefully Pierre Poilievre repeals that nonsense in day one when he takes over next year. All right. Anyways, I'm Jordan Bateman. I'm VP Communications for ICBA, and I'll be giving you some updates on LNG Canada, TMX's economic impact, and let's talk a little bit about the BC political landscape. First of all, let's talk about LNG Canada. So LNG Canada continues to work its way towards startup. This is the largest single private investment in Canadian history. Giant $40+ billion project in Kitimat, British Columbia. And Petronas is the Malaysian national state energy firm. They own a 25% stake in LNG Canada, and they announced this week that they've purchased 3 new LNG vessels that basically more than doubles their doubles their fleet doubles its shipping fleet in getting this energy from Kitimat to Asia, but it actually more than doubles it. So it doubles the number of ships, but these are their immediately become their 3 largest ships. But very important step forward for LNG Canada as that project inches its way closer towards startup. Second, TMX. So kind of an interesting story or data point in EnergyNow media. I found it interesting, at least. So essentially, EnergyNow.ca points out that TMX will add 0.25 percentage points to Canada's economic growth. That's slightly higher than the entire province of British Columbia's contribution to national growth, which is pegged to 0.23 percentage points. So one project, Trans Mountain Pipeline, will contribute more to Canada's growth than the entire province of British Columbia's growth will do, which kind of a crazy stat when you think about it. Anyways, Energy Now quite rightly points out this is another sign of how the EBGBs is what I'm feeling, how the Eby Government's pivot away from natural resource development is slowing British Columbia's economy. As the piece says, quote, a key concern lies in the diminishing confidence among investors in British Columbia's resource industries. The ever-changing policies of the provincial government, especially the uncertain regulations, have made it difficult for investors to make decisions in the province. If you look at the piece on EnergyNow.ca, they talk a lot about the proposed changes to the Lands Act, which is not coincidentally. What's the opposite of coincidentally? Which is the one of the top probably 3 policies that John Rustad of the BC Conservative Party talks about is fighting these changes to the Lands Act. You know, if you boil down Rustad's message, it's really 3 major points. Number 1, axe the carbon tax. Number 2, address affordability. And number 3, stop these proposed changes to the Lands Act, which he believes will take away private property rights. So, again, the data point, though, on this one is really interesting. TMX adds 0.25% to the growth of Canada. The whole province of British Columbia in that same period will add 0.23%. Anyway, speaking of Rustad, let's talk a little bit about the BC Conservatives and BC politics in general. So over the weekend, a poll was released by Liaison very French, Liaison Strategies poll. And it shows that the BC NDP and BC Conservatives are within the margin of error in support. So the NDP lead at 40%, the BC Conservatives are 2 points back at 38%. Margin of error is 3% for this almost 1,100 person sample. So, basically dead heat. When you're within the margin of error, you're in a dead heat. Not quite sure how that would project into seats. Obviously, the NDP would be stronger in the urban areas in Vancouver Island. The Conservatives would be stronger in the rural areas. So some thought about that. There's also the vote splitting issues with BC United. The Greens are at 10%. BC United is at 9%. That's the second straight poll that has BCU, who currently sit as the official opposition in the province of British Columbia. The second straight poll that has them in 4th place. Now, it's not just voter support. It's also money, the mother's milk of politics, as it was famously called. Fundraising has shifted in what some people called the free enterprise primary between BC Conservatives and BC United. In Q2, for the first time ever, the BC Conservatives outraised BC United $1.1 million to $627,000. So like $500,000 more raised by the upstart BC Conservatives over BC United. So for 2024, the BC Conservatives are now ahead of BC United in donations by about $25,000. Again, first time over a 6-month period that BC Conservatives have ever outraised BC United. And it seems to be surging towards them, the money. Both still trail the governing NDP, which brought in $2.2 million in Q2. So that leads me to this little piece by a longtime reporter. Man, I grew up watching this guy in the NewsHour, Harvey Overfeld. Love this guy. He still writes a blog called Keeping It Real. You can find it at harveyoverfeld.ca. And he sort of was parsing the numbers and some of the other things that have happened across around the world, France, UK, Toronto, where essentially sitting governments have been chucked out. Change is the message as people kind of get through the COVID period and are tired of the way things have been run during COVID and since. Change has really become the key message around the world. But Harvey has a good quote here about why he thinks the BC NDP and Conservatives are now so close in the BC political race. Quote, "The NDP may no longer be so popular in urban strongholds that have traditionally formed its power base. Voters in Vancouver and Victoria are really feeling the squeeze of outrageous housing rents, mortgage costs, ever-rising property taxes, higher and higher commercial taxes, fees, carbon taxes, hydro changes, transit costs, grocery prices, a troubled health system that sometimes seems on life support itself, shortfalls in schools and education funding, fear of rising crime." Is that all, Harvey? Well, drug users wreak havoc in many communities. A failing in justice system and an NDP government has been ineffective in solving these problems. So Harvey's kind of theory here is like, Eby missed his window. He should have gone much earlier. He should have done the Horgan thing and basically foregone the full 4-year term and gone earlier. Probably, from a purely crass political calculation, probably Harvey's right. Eby probably should have gone early. That's just not David Eby, though, right? Like, one thing I remember about Eby is that he's a lawyer. And if you recall when he first took over from John Horgan, he really wanted he really kind of emphasized to people, to voters, that they'd be able to see the changes that he was going to bring. And as a lawyer, he wanted to prove his case. So it wasn't just good enough to say, I'm going to fix affordability. He wanted to prove out how he was going to fix affordability. So, that is kind of the backdrop there. And to prove a case, you need time, right? You need stats to change. Now, Eby, all Eby's proven is that everything on that list that Harvey Overfeld puts out, everything's gotten worse in BC since he took over. I can't think of one file that the province has worked on that's gotten better. Maybe you have one out there, and more power to you if you do. I do not. I can't think of a single file the province runs that has gotten better under his watch. And so this is a huge problem. The lawyer has not proven his case. In fact, the case is starting to fall apart. And now you have the BC Conservatives surging, and more importantly, this desire for change starting to take shape in the electorate. Still a few months till election. Was it July? So August, September, October, 3 months till the election. Anything can happen. But right now the momentum all seems to be behind the BC Conservatives. They seem to have now prevailed in what was called the free enterprise primary. The money's with them. Voter support seems to be shifting to them. And weird things are happening in BC politics, right? Like I saw a picture on Twitter of John Rustad, Eleanor Sturko, and Selena Robinson together at a pro-Israel event in Vancouver over the weekend. Can you imagine a year ago saying to people, hey, there will be a picture of John Rustad, Eleanor Sturko, and Selena Robinson together at any public event in an election year, 3 months out from an election? I mean, at the time, Rustad had just been booted from the BC Liberal caucus. Eleanor Sturko is the rising star in the BC United world, and Selena Robinson is an NDP cabinet minister. Hard to believe there'd be any function that would bring the three of them together, and yet there the three of them were together in Vancouver, supporting Israel and remembering the tragic occurrences that happened last October. So things change fast in politics. One thing for sure, you can hold on to your hats. The next 3 months will be interesting. We're in barbecue season. our friends at ICBA Alberta, they're just stampeding up a storm right now, going from event to event to event. We don't really have that same sort of concentrated political output in British Columbia, but there are tons of things going on. People are door knocking events, and the BC Conservatives seem to be everywhere. Hard to go to an event now and not see BC Conservatives there. They certainly have the wind in their sails, and they're feeling that way, and they're going for the not just defeating the BC, but they're going for the win overall. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few months. Okay, that's it. Again, trying out my new Meta glasses here, try to give people a backdoor way of seeing some of these links. But for everything we've talked about today, you can go to ICBA It'll be up in a couple minutes. Post with the links to all of this stuff. All right, hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk.